All right, I feel like I could use a haircut. Just saying. Today we're going to talk about two pads that are on my desk, and I was asked to review one of them recently, and then I'm going to be comparing it to something I've had for a long time. So the pad I'm talking about today, let's hold it up. Let's do what we do in most reviews, even though it's awkward. It's a black square review. This is the Glorius Fire Elements pad, and this pad I got asked to do the other day on YouTube in a YouTube comment, and then I was like, yeah, I should get one. Pull one up. So ordered one, $25 on the Glorius website. Got here in a couple days, and it's not the first thing I've ordered from them, and honestly the ship times are pretty good for what you're paying. So $25 shipped, and then today I'm comparing it to the Artisan Hien, which is the red square pad review, which is a long-standing kind of favorite pad of mine, and whenever I get bored of some of the other faster pads, I go to this, which is a little bit slower than the normal pads I use, but it's still just interesting. So the reason why this pad is so interesting is the textured surface on it. So the surface, if I go to my overhead cam, I can show you a little bit more what I'm talking about. Get this lined up. All right. So the surface on this pad, when you're going left and right, is pretty dang smooth. It's got a texture to it, so your mouse rides almost like riding a little bit above rather than against a soft piece of pad, if you can imagine that. So there's like a smoothness to, you know, like a fabric, and then there's these bumps where, since it's bumps, it's making less contact with points of your mouse at the same time, if that makes sense. Maybe I should like draw this out so you can understand. But what it ends up feeling like is your mouse is riding over these bumps, so it doesn't feel bumpy, it just feels smooth. But then the weave is in such a way that up and down is a little bit less smooth. It's a little bit not smooth, less smooth, it's a little bit more resistant. It resists a little bit more. So this pad is really good for games where you go left to right most of the time and not up and down. There's a lot of FPS that fall into that. The most obvious for me is tact shooters, things like CSGO, Valorant, where you're really keeping that head level and you really want to keep that left and right movement, and you don't want to get too much of that up and down movement because that's not where you're trying to aim most of the time. Now, for things like Apex and Fortnite, you might want something more like this. So this is also a textured pad. This is the Glorius pad now. This fire pad, when you move around on it, is the same smoothness in all directions. And it also has a little bit of a texture. It's not the same kind of quality as you get on the Artisan pad. Artisan is really known for having this weaved edge, or the stitched edge, that goes below the actual pad surface, so your hand's never rubbing on it, specifically your wrists and your arm never rub on this, and if you hit the edge, you'll just go straight off, whereas this, there's a little bit of a bump here that you'll feel. With going off this side of the pad on the Artisan pads, you never feel that because the weaved edge is below the height of the pad, which is really nice to see. Also, there's a little bit of fray on this pad. It's hardly anything noticeable. There's one on this side too, but it's over the actual pad, so it's hard to see. It's hardly anything noticeable, but I'm just showing you really the difference that you get for a pad that's $25 versus a pad that's $50 to $75. So like 2 to 3 times the price. These you also normally have to get imported from Japan. There's a bunch of US resellers on Amazon, but they still take a while, and it's varying in stock. I would say for pad feel that this one is more abrasive, and it's just about as squishy. This is the Hien mid pad, whereas this is the normal pad that you get, and it's about equivalent to the mid as far as how much you can push it in. Just a little bit, nothing major, nothing really show stopping, but you can definitely feel a little bit of that push. When I push with my whole mouse, I'm not going to feel a difference. I'm not going to feel a difference between the two pads, and I'm not going to feel like I'm like pushing the mouse into a piece of rubber or something like that. So now talking about who this pad is for, and the reason why I struggled to make this video is because the pad, it's a black square review. It was so mid tier and uninteresting, but it's a good pad. It's just not interesting. So it's a black square, And oh, let's talk about the dimensions real quick, because it is one more difference. One or two more things difference before I talk about this, because it's not very interesting, but here are the specs, right? So compared to the Artisan Hien, it is in the Artisan like pad size, like this is the size all my Artisan pads come in. This is the large Artisan pad, and then the Glorius one is a little bit taller, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches there, and then hardly wider, maybe like a 1/4 inch wider. And yeah, that's it. The coatings on the back of the pads, so normally you notice that these have these rubber coatings. The Artisan coating's always been really good, and this pad is a little bit more of that classic cheaper texturized rubber, but I don't think it's going to be any issue. I would not recommend ever getting this kind of rubber wet though, because when it gets wet, this rubber has been known to break down a lot. So if you ever spill something on your desk, your pad just might be toast. And well, as this, you can wash it and do things with it, and it will come back just as good as new. This will not. These come flat, so don't roll them up. Yeah, but let's get back to what I was talking about before. So who is this pad for? So I've gone back and forth on rating things and kind of to give a number value to the way I rate my products. And I had it at like a list of 10, and I've been bringing it down. So I have 2 things I'm going to give it a rating on, right? I'm going to get a rating on value, which takes in everything into account on the value of an item. And then I'm going to give it a rating on how many people I think this pad is for. So let's do value first. I would say $25 for a solid pad. Nothing special. The edges are going to be frayed. It's that cheaper rubber on the bottom, but the actual quality and surface of it is pretty good. For $25, I don't think you're going anywhere wrong, and there's not really anything else that I'm going to recommend different about it, unless you wanted the more specialized pads. I think the other 2 Glorius pads are a little bit more interesting, let's say. But that's what brings us this Glorius Fire Pad strength, is that it's basically for everybody. It's non-offensive, it's a black square, and it just does its job. So this pad, I would give a value rating of about 80%. So that's about like the middle tier for me. It's a little bit better than the mid-level. So like mid-level, maybe 75%. So 80%, I'd say, is a generous rating there. Good value, right? So if you're looking for something, don't feel bad if you bought this. Definitely a good product, just not that interesting. And then for how many people this is for, I'd give this pad as a recommendation. If someone asks me a mouse pad and doesn't really have a very specific thing that they're looking for, let's say it's their first mouse pad, 95% of the time I'm going to recommend a pad like this, as long as you have the desk size for it. I don't really see a reason not to get this pad. For $25, I think is a steal. When you're talking against something like a QCK XL, something that goes for like $15, the $10 more on this pad, it gets you, I think, a substantial increase in your value. So, and I don't think, money aside, I don't think this is a bad pad. I think you could use this pad forever. This is probably considerable like the G Pro X Superlight of Mousepads, where it just fits most people just fine, and it's gonna get the job done. So yeah, that's my review of this pad versus the Artisan Hien. I think that I'm gonna do another review of the Glorius Ice Mousepad to the Shidenkai that I have, because I think that's a much more interesting review, and they're much more interesting pads. The Hien is more interesting because of that textured weave up and down, but overall the Glorius Fire Elements pad is just a good all-around pad. If you get one, totally don't feel bad about it. I don't know why I'm saying don't feel bad about it, but I kind of feel bad about it, because whenever I buy a product and it's just mid-tier and it's boring, you know, what are you gonna do? But not a huge difference between this and a lot of other pads, but it is a good value. So do pick it up, do look at my other videos, and comment if you want to see me review anything next. I'm pretty much a sucker. I literally just saw this in a YouTube comment and then I bought one. So that's about all I have to say. Peace.